go away from the Secretary of Interior standards, what happens is we have the potential to lose our CLG status. Now, with that comes the ability to grant base flood elevations to properties that maybe want to do a smaller addition that are in the flood zone. They would then have to raise their entire structure. The only variance to the FEMA flood map is in a historic district. So that's a real benefit since most of our historic districts are in a flood zones. So all of these guidelines and everything, that is one really big thing. The other thing is the historic waiver. So some of these homes need substantial renovations. And once they pass the 50% threshold, there is an ability and to retain the structure for you all to grant a waiver, which otherwise would not allow the development of that type through the variance process because the variance process is more restricted. So these are very big bonuses, and those things come with being a CLG. So that's important that we need to, when you're making decisions, that you're in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards and keeping with the design guidelines and making kind of these decisions on that. So.
Thank you for reminding.
Yeah. I think we're okay with the roots coming up to us on a case by case basis. I just think in this situation, y'all have to take a vote. I feel, I understand your point.
With the motions, please.
Oh, we have to go public comment first.
Oh, yeah, public comment. Any public comment?
Watch now. Motion, please.
I move to, Trish Hamilton initially. I move to deny HRPB project number 23-001-00084 with staff recommended conditions for a CAO for the replacement of historic metal shingle roofing with asphalt shingle roofing at 722 North K Street, as the applicant has not established by competent substantial evidence that replacement with metal shingles is infeasible or that the application is compliant with the City of Lake Worth beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? Good vote. Go ahead, you get next.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Thank you so much. All right, so the next item, if you want to move forward.
Yep. Motion carries 3-1. All right, so on to new business. This is project number 23-015-00004. This is a request for 3 variances to allow a shed and pavers exceeding maximum impermeable surface, as well as a shade sail structure in the required setback and exceeding the maximum accessory structure coverage at 1115 North Ocean Breeze. So you can see the location here. It's on that west side of North Ocean Breeze. And this is a current survey showing the house, the accessory garage structure that was converted a while back, as well as the unpermitted shed and impermeable surfaces in the backyard. Not all of those impermeable surfaces were unpermitted, but much of them were. The shade sail is not shown on here, but it is attached to posts on this rear gate back here. The property was cited for work without permits in October 22 for the shed, a gate, and the shade sail. We got permits in February 2023 through a bunch of reviews. Here we are. So here's some photos of the shed. It's kind of near that back corner of the property. And here's that shade sail. So this is considered a structure in our zoning code. Anything that is permanently affixed to the ground with some sort of foundation. In this case, these poles that are permanently into the ground is considered a structure and does have to require comply with our setbacks. So it conflicts with 3 areas of our zoning code. It's over the impermeable surface by about 645 square feet. Pavers installed in the backyard without permits between 2015 and 2018 do contribute to that, and we have discussed with the property owner that those could be removed to accommodate the shed. The rear setback, like I said, anything that's permanently in the ground with some sort of foundation or anchoring is a structure. This is about 2 feet from the rear setback, and it does also exceed the accessory structure allowance. We have a little allowance in our code for one shed on the property, not to count towards that accessory structure. But because of that shade sale, even without the shed counting, we're over that allowance.
What started over there?
They were cited for work without permits. So this work is all completed.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just curious, you know, how somebody walking down at the, hey, you share. All right,
So we're gonna run through our variance criteria. You've all been through variances before, so as you know, all 4 have to be met for staff to
These are
feel
findings.
like there's support.
So the criteria in here are findings. So this is our analysis. You don't have to agree with this analysis, but if you disagree, you have to address the finding and state why you feel that the application needs the more findings.
Awesome. So A is basically special circumstances are unique to this property. We don't find that that is the case here. It's, you know, a very standard platted lot of record size. It's the result of the action of the applicant. You know, the circumstances here apply to the neighborhood generally. For B, that it would deprive them of any reasonable use of the land. We don't find that it meets this condition either. A small storage shed is a reasonable expectation, but like I mentioned before, some of those unpermitted pavers could be removed to make up for that impermeable surface issue. C is that it's the minimum required. Again, we don't find that this is the minimum required for the reasonable use of the land. Can remove some of those pavers, and a shaded parking area is not required for reasonable use of a residential property. They do have plenty of parking, it's just the shade sale structure. For D, we don't find that it would be unduly injurious or detrimental to the public welfare. There could be some issues, you know, affecting stormwater flow, obviously, when you have extra impermeable surface. And the rear setback issue could have some, you know, negative impact on people going through the alley, but we don't find that it would be, you know, to the level that it wouldn't meet this criterion. So we find it meets 1 out of 4. So as such, we recommend denial of the proposed variances.
So you're saying that if some of the unpermitted pavers were removed, that would make a big difference, right?
Yeah, for the
Permeable
shed.
space
Yep, yeah. If some of the pavers were removed, that would
and replaced with like gravel, or what would that be?
Grass.
Replaced with grass?
some sort of
Okay.
landscaping material, yeah.
Build it.
So the sheds setbacks and stuff are all fine. The shed's just an issue for impermeable surface. The
Solve an issue by moving the tape.
yeah, by removing some, yeah.
Okay.
Is grass the only substance
So
that?
they
you-
would need a landscaping, or if they wanted to do, they could do a semi-permeable paver, which has an engineering spec, or they could do grasscrete, which counts for 50%. So they could, but that stuff we can work out as staff.
We can work on that, yeah.
If they want to come in and get their backyard permitted and comply with the impermeable surface,
Right.
does the shed itself trigger total impermeable surface? Or is overs, or is it just the shed with the pavers?
I believe it's just the shed with the pavers. If enough of the pavers were removed, the shed would be able to work in with the impermeable surface. So
Not really a lot of good angles because of the fencing.
but yeah, so this is the shed, and you can,
Right.
No.
no, here, kind of this big area here.
That we don't have a picture.
Yeah, we don't.
So they have to take all those out?
They would need to take at least 645 square feet,
Wow.
because that's the amount that they're over right now.
Basically the whole yard. paved.
Yeah, a good
Well,
portion of the yard is paved.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they could do a semi-permeable paver, or they could do something else. And this is why we tell people it's so important when, come in for your permits
Right.
and you get your work permitted, because I'm sure this was quite costly. And now to be in a situation where unless they get this variance, they have to dig it up. I mean, it's, in our opinion, it is a self-created hardship. So it's definitely good to come in and get your work permitted before you. move
And I
forward.
think maybe you can explain the environmental reason for this permeable surface, just so everyone understands why this is so important.
Right, so when permeable surface is because we have a code kind of based on sustainability, it's a standard that's not just in the historic district, it's citywide. And it applies to commercial properties and all other properties. And the idea behind it, it's both a water, it's a water quality and and it has an impact to stormwater as well. So it slows down by having the water absorb into the water table immediately and not run off into the stormwater. All of that, really the most polluted water is the first inch of rainfall. And the more of that can be captured on site and run off more slowly into landscaping produces a cleaner water that then goes into our stormwater system. And also, as well, the impermeable surface acts like, especially for these existing properties, they never had to comply with any drainage requirements. So coming in and paving your whole yard, basically without a drainage standard. Now, if you had this much pavement, like in a commercial property, if there was that much pavement, there would be something called an exfiltration trench, and there'd be a lot more drainage, and that's a much more expensive thing to happen on site. So none of those exist because this is an existing property. So the impermeable surface was designed to mitigate over impacting our stormwater system and also providing cleaner water into our stormwater, which discharges directly into our coastal.
Well, that begs the question there too. I mean, have there been property owners in this situation where they've gone above the limit? And can you retrofit what's there to capture the stormwater from drainage? In other words, I know when I was on planning and zoning years ago, that we had some people, install barrels and reclaim the water and things like that. Is that a possibility in these situations or
So
not?
you would have to grant the variance, but require them to meet, to basically, then you would be essentially requiring the homeowner to prepare an engineering study, hire an engineer, do the stormwater, like at that point, honestly, they could rip up the pavers and do a semi-permeable. I mean, theoretically, you would still need to grant the variance, but with the mitigation that it could be engineered to give the functional equivalent of the permeable surface. But then that's a whole other study. And then there has to be additional improvements on site to capture that water that would have then run off instead. So
It is possible, just very, very expensive.
it's expensive. It's more, this is a less expensive.
Yeah, right.
All right, Annie, are you there?
Yes,
All right, is there a public comment or the?
Well, we
property
need
owner
the
first?
applicant.
Applicant?
I bring visual aids.
Good, show the go.
You need to state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Emilio Vasquez. I own the property with my wife Ellen Nagely at 1115 North Ocean Breeze. There were some of our neighbors that I think sent some emails in. Several emails.
One
And the other one for email to us.
That's correct. And I bring a couple from other neighbors that didn't.
Jerry.
Okay. I did bring some pictures of the pavers. First of all, we were on the home cottage tour a couple years ago.
Nice.
And so what my wife did for the tour, we have some old pictures of the house when we first bought it compared to what it was, what it is now. So in some of the old pictures, we did put pavers down without a permit. That's because there was cement there when we bought the house. So tearing down the cement and putting the pavers, I didn't think it was an issue at all. So I don't know if I can walk up and,
Jerry.
so this is the front of the house, and then this is, you can see what the back of the house looked like with the cement that was there. And I have some more pictures. We have done a lot of other work, to the house that we did get permit on. I never thought putting in pavers with the cement that was there was gonna be a problem. As far as the shed goes, it's not on the ground, it's above the ground, so water easily goes in there, goes underneath the shed.
Would you have issue with removing some of those pavers?
I would, it would really change our lifestyle. We have during Christmases, birthdays, we have about 25 family members that come out. And this is where we put up our tents. Some of the pictures you see are stuff that we have inside the shed. And you see there's tables and chairs that we use when we have get-togethers at the house.
Hey, we're okay with, I'm okay with the shed.
I mean, there's probably 25 people that come out and this is where we set up, I'm sorry, but that's where we set up the, you know, the tables and chairs for our guests.
But could you put like, buy those outdoor kind of carpets and put those down, like you could roll them up, store them and put them right over the grass for your gatherings, you know what I mean?
I think the
Really-
expense of taking up this pavers is gonna be drastic, but I have an option. You saw a picture of the shade area. That cement that's there in that shade area was also in the house when we bought it. I will take that out.
Which area is that
Right.
on?
Approach.
Actually, she had a better picture. I don't think I have it here. Is there a picture of the shade structure?
Mhm. Yep, let's see.
That one. That's cement, that's cement that was here when we bought the house.
Is that enough space though?
That might be their required parking space.
I mean,
They
They
don't
do
have any
have-
off-street parking.
They do have a long driveway
They have a
here,
driveway, in the- okay, all right.
so I
So,
don't know if that would be.
no, so it's, there's a whole history of that. So you have a driveway on the front of your lot.
So that's fine. I don't know off the top of my head if that would be enough
It
to,
probably won't be enough. but
No.
I'll really- If we're gonna negotiate with me, I'll take that out.
So
I'll still park there.
we
Well,
really
I-
can't negotiate on the
Yeah.
fly. If you're willing to remove some concrete, what we can do is we can work with the applicant between now and the next meeting, and we can continue them to the September meeting.
Right.
To a date certain, so the advertisement doesn't have to happen. If you wanted to grant a portion of the variance related to the shed today, you could split the motion. And then we could work with them to the point where they may not need a variance. If they're willing to take out other portions of concrete and work with us on some issues, they may not need the variance for the impermeable.
Right, what I'm saying, variance is very, people don't realize how.
They're very legally cumbersome. And if
Yes,
we can work out the impermeable on the back end to limit the removal pavers, because he's willing to remove other concrete and work with us on that end, we would prefer to do that. And then if there's still an issue where staff and the applicant don't agree, then we
They
could
can
be
come
back for the variance in September.
I also really
work with you on the shed, you know, we're okay with shed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
And work with staff and you're out.
I do have a big issue with staff saying, we cemented the whole backyard. That is, that is really not close to the truth whatsoever,
They have,
okay?
they have no.
It's not, okay? Because if you look at some of the pictures, it's very lush in our backyard.
Beautiful house.
It's very lush, it's very lush. There isn't, it's not totally cemented back there. That's not how it is.
All right,
So are we approving with
Thank
conditions?
they're gonna do a split the motion.
First of all, I want to apologize to the applicant if the something said in hyperbole was mistaken. It's obviously a lovely home and we.
It could be lovely to be all cemented. It's both. It's not cemented and it's lovely.
So, but it exceeds the amount of impervious surface that the code allows.
And I also
Okay.
wanted to point out some of the pictures of the post for the shed, or not the shed, the shade structure. If you see the pictures, they're butted right up against the fence. You can't tell the difference between those poles and the 4x4s on the fence. It doesn't take up any more room at all. It's adjacent right to that fence. There's nothing,
don't think that's the,
That's the issue.
that's not that.
If he could attach the problem is that he wants a flat surface. If he attached the shade structure to the fence and did it like this as an angle and the poles were part of the fence and were angled that way, that might be something he could do, but
Split this.
if he connects the shade structure to the 4x4s on the fence, so the problem is that exceeds the height at the fence line. That is a structure, it's not part, so it's a
the
fences
poles
have a maximum height. Fences have a maximum height of 6 feet.
the poles have maximum height.
The poles have a maximum height because they're a structure, and they're also not allowed to be placed against your property.
The
line.
poles for the fence, the 4x4 posts.
Yes,
that the-
the fence cannot exceed 6 feet in height.
Okay, so I can put trees back there and hook stuff to the trees,
Absolutely. And in fact, for a tree, you don't need a permit. We would
which
love
doesn't
to-
make sense to me.
we would
It doesn't
love to
make,
see a
you already
tree.
went there, it doesn't make sense to me.
So.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, there's pictures of what the alley
So
looks like.
I think you're working on snatching defeat from the jaws of victory here. Okay, so.
Oh, shut up.
Okay.
you. Now,
So
is there
let's-
any other public comment before we? Anyone want to say anything? All right, then,
So where are we going here?
you're gonna sit down.
And then we're gonna work on the impermeable surface. They're gonna give you your shed, okay? That's, at least that's what I hear.
Thank you. Is the shade structure gone?
The shade structure's gone. Unless you-
Yeah. So we need a motion, because I can't make one.
So the motion would be, if you wanted to approve, it would be to approve for, it would be approve the, accessory structure increase limitation. And then,
The accessory structure increase was for the shade structure as well. The shed's just the impermeable.
okay, so then it would be the impermeable surface to allow for the shed only, And then-
Which alleviates there.
which it lists, approving approving the variance leaves 2 variances. It would
Right.
only allow for the shed. So you would just say, and approve a variance to allow an adjustment to the impermeable surface to accommodate the shed, and we'll work out the exact square footage of that proportion on our end, okay?
There's nothing with, if you're denying the shade structure, I have to take that down. The 2 poles back there. The 2 3x3
Didn't
metal
you also
poles.
say that
back
you
there.
could shorten the pole where along the fence?
I mean, it's a 4-foot
Sail-
fence or
We
5.
can explain it. There's a motion on the floor. You
There's a
really,
motion on the floor. You have to
you
say-
really like, it's your time.
Can I just say now?
Yeah.
Somebody make a motion, please.
Okay, if you can help me with this, I move to approve HRPB project number 23-01500004.
For one of
For
3,
one of the 3 variances
to allow a variance to the impermeable structure.
to allow
Impermeable, the maximum impermeable surface
a variance to the maximum impermeable
for
surface
the shed.
for the shed.
Stop.
And then say, that's it.
We got a motion. We have a second. Second. I have a second. All those in favor?
I
Sorry,
Well,
excuse
both
me.
Oh, sorry, we've got our city attorney on here.
What did you wrong?
Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you felt like you had enough of the reasons that the variance meets the criteria that were put into the record, since that was not specifically gone through in the staff report.
So what you would do is just now state your findings. So one of the things that we said for A is that this is a reasonable expectation. And then some of the other things you could also find is that because it's a historic structure, that allowing for a shed would allow additional storage space without requiring an addition to the structure.
Yeah.
That was a lot of words.
Not approved by neighbors. Right, it's
Yeah.
basically what as stated. So somebody said that stated when it's second. I can vote on
As stated.
it. Second, right, all in favor?
Aye.
See, that was-
Okay.
Okay. Next,
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You know, you have to understand, variances carry a lot of weight. That's why you see, if we get yelled at, usually the attorney's sitting there, you know, shooting daggers at us and sit there and say, well, we have to be very careful with variances. And I've been dragged out in the hall on this thing a couple of times. The importance and the legalities of variances. We're a quasi judicial board. So,
Can I just ask you, am I gonna get with staff at some point or?
Yes.
Please send your staff that you're working with an email and we'll follow up with them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
thank you, sir.
okay,
Yeah.
another variance. 23-015-00006. This is a variance to allow a shed between the principal structure and public street at 231 South J Street. So here we are, South J Street and 3rd Avenue South. Here's our survey. So you can see on the survey, the reason that we are here for a variance, the structure is at the total back of the property with very little side yards. So there's not really much area to put the shed other than in the front. So there is an existing shed here. Staff wasn't able to find any sort of permitting or variances for the one that's there, but the new shed will be in the same location as the old shed. So here's some photos so you can get an idea. This top left is internal. This top right is from South J Street, and this is from 3rd Avenue South with the fence there. So variance request, our LDRs require that accessory structures are not constructed between the principal structure and the public right of way, which is obviously what we're here to request. So we do think that there are special circumstances here. The rear setbacks like 4 feet in most of it. Side setbacks are like 1.5 feet. There's nowhere else to put the shed. We do think that the shed is a reasonable expectation for a property, similar to what we were just talking about with the other property. And the proposed shed does comply with the minimum front and side setbacks. So we do believe that this is the minimum variance to make this possible. And we don't believe that this would be unduly injurious to adjacent properties. We have included a condition that fencing or landscape screening is maintained along that south side property line. So, conclusion, we recommend approval.
Yeah, I mean, if we're allowing through the years swimming pools in front yards because of the fact that the house was built on the alleyway, I don't have an issue with the shed as long as it's landscape fence.
Staff has historically supported these type of variants in the historic district because of the protection of the structure. So these get a lot more support in the historic district for sure. Do we have the applicant here? Yes. Would you like to speak?
Oh, that's you?
I don't know if I need to.
You don't need
I
to?
All right,
All right.
can you move to the motions?
Yep.
If there's any public comment, Sherry.
Unless they're gonna deny it, then I'll.
Yeah.
then I'll see you, right.
We have no public comment on the item.
So we have no public comment. You're good. Can we get a motion, please?
Yes. I move to approve HRPB project number 23-015-00006 with staff recommended conditions for a variance to allow the installation of a shed between the principal structure and the public street at 231 South J Street. The application meets variance criteria based on the data and analysis in the staff report.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. You got your share.
Okay, next, let's go ahead and keep moving.
Yep. Okay. Our third and final variance for tonight, 23-015-00005, a request for 3 variances to allow a gravel boat storage area in front of the front building line, which also exceeds maximum impermeable surface and does not meet minimum front yard landscaped area requirements at 1106 South Palmway. So here we are, just south of 11th and South Palmway. So here we've got our survey. You can see there's a lot of house, there's a lot of impermeable surfaces. The areas marked in green by the applicant are some new landscaping areas that they wanted to note. And then the area marked in pink is where the property owners created a gravel boat storage area. This is here, the property was cited by code compliance for having their boat storage in front of the front building line in May 2023. And that is what brought us here. So here's some photos of it. The ones that are labeled with the timestamp at top were from code enforcement and the middle one was provided by the applicants. So we've got some history on boat variances that we thought would be important to go through with you all. So prior to 2018, there was sort of administrative process for non-conforming boat parking, sort of equivalent to a waiver, which you all have seen before. The approval didn't run with the property like a variance does. It was specific to that boat and that property owner. So if they sold the boat or they sold the property, away goes the boat approval. So because of that, there's only a few remaining valid pre-2018 approvals. 2018, the code was changed to require standard variance processes for boat storage that doesn't comply with the LDRs. Since that change, we haven't had any boat variances granted or even applied for until now.
And that part of that went away was there was concern about a lot of neighborhoods about the volume of boats in yards that was occurring. So that's why that particular administrative process went away. And then, so the only process that remains is the variance, the formal variance process.
I mean, the existing code basically states boats, trailers, and beyond the width of the house. Fence, hedge, green, can't see from the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here are the three criteria
Or,
or three code. So this particular one has 3 variances to accommodate the boat in this location.
yeah, so the first one that got triggered, obviously being in front of the front building line in the front yard area generally. And then in addition to that, when staff was looking at the initial submittal, because there is so much existing impermeable surface, since from what we were able to find roughly, 2001 to 2005, there's some existing nonconformities in total impermeable surface and the front yard landscaping requirements. Those are allowed to exist as they are, but the addition of this gravel increased those nonconformities, which our code obviously doesn't allow. So that's why we're there for those second and third variances for impermeable surface and landscaped area. So we've got the same variance criteria as everything else. In criterion A, the circumstances we find do apply generally to nearby lands and buildings. A double frontage lot is somewhat unusual in the city, but all of South Palmway from 5th Avenue South to 8th Avenue South is in this same situation. The variances are also the work of, or the result of unpermitted work. So it wouldn't meet the criteria in the fact that it is the result of action of the applicant. For 2, we don't find that this would deprive them of continued use of the property as a single family residence. Storage of a recreational vehicle is reasonable, but it's not required for reasonable use. And we do think that there could be some alternative options for the boat storage on the property to at least better comply with the LDRs, whether that's storing it in the existing attached garage, depending on the size of the boat, storing it at the rear of the property and screening it from the public right of way on that part of the property, or storing and screening it on existing impermeable surface so we don't have those second and third variances triggered. So for C, we don't contend that it's the minimum required for reasonable use of the property for largely the same reasons that we just discussed for criterion B. And for D, we do find that it could meet criterion D, similar to the one we heard 2 times ago. Increased impermeable surface is always a concern for stormwater flow, but we don't find that it would be unduly injurious. And we have added conditions of approval if you all move to approve the requested variances, including conditions about screening the boat. So we recommend denial because we don't find that it meets all of the criteria. But like I said, if you all move to approve it, we have drafted conditions of approval.
I think the application is figured out.
Hello. Hello. Let my better hand. Oh, great.
Hi, it's Ed and Teresa DeVoe, 1106 South Palmway.
How you doing? Number one. You see, so it's screening, right? We're only talking about, Ed DeVoe, 1106 South Palmway, of course, we're on the property. That little pink area is less than 60 square. And the boat
is off to the side. Area is off to the side, and we're still using part of the driveway, just the driveway, still keep the code on. And underneath that there, gravel, is a membrane surface. I'm in the drainage pit. So we put, a membrane there to actually keep it, to make it a 100% permeable, situation. I mean, the water would just
Go through.
and what's after that, it will act better than grass. That rock right there was very expensive. They call it landscape rock. And therefore, that right there, I got it from, outside CSR. And that rock right there is especially made for drainage. It works better than 100% any kind of grass you can put over there. So therefore, that fresh landscaping we see running parallel east and west, we just put that in. It was a raggedy old edge we had there for 20 years. So we freshened that whole area up over there, and that will go up to 5 feet to shade that better. But also put in a screening from the south, if you come in the south going north. Well, include a screen to shade that boat, you never see that boat. If you're looking at from east to west, you can't see the boat at all right now.
Well, you can, these pictures were taken almost right after you did the landscaping, you took the whole hedge out of there. This is all brand new landscaping, so, some of the minimal requirements, I think we've already met most all of them that they suggested. Once that hedge grows up, this is a brand new hedge that we just put in, you're not gonna be able to see it. Our property is unique because there's full view of the house on 3 sides. And one of the suggestions was to park the boat on the south side, which is gonna cost and look a lot more intrusive on our property to build some kind of enclosure. The back of the home, which is just as full of view as front of the home, we'd be taking out fencing, having to put an entryway through the sidewalk,
They're still trying to get it off the lakeside.
and still have to build some kind of visual structure around it. We felt like this was the least impact, and as far as impermeable surfaces and storm drain runoff, and I know you evaluate each property as an individual property, but just to the north of this property, just beyond that hedge,
Yeah.
is a huge green space, and quite frankly, we're protecting ourselves from the city water runoff because it flows in the streets. The street is exactly on the same level as that whole green space, and it's coming up to our home. So in fact, this area is protecting our home from being flooded from the city's green space. We just feel like this was the point where it's minimal impact. And that boat, once the hedge will grow up, is not gonna cause any more visual than our pickup truck will, that is parked there. Okay.
So I will just state that because this is technically the front of their house, the issue is the front yard requirement is that it's both impermeable and landscaped. So it's not, even with the semi-permeable credit, they are over their paved surfaces in their front yard. So that's why in this location, they need that second variance. So it's not in the front yard, it's impermeable and landscaped. And so they
So
have.
need a little more landscape, is what you're saying.
Right, so it's the green space component. So, and the issue is that they have, they're in a tight situation because they have built a circular driveway. They could take out some of, like maybe narrow components of some of the circular driveway or do some things to not require that variance, but they would still ultimately require the variance for the parking in the front yard. And it is a weird situation. We are gonna bring back a code change. It wouldn't allow this situation. So if this is a situation, that's okay. But to look at double frontage lots, because we've had some other issues pop up, but that's probably gonna be something we'll work on in the fall, but it wouldn't assist Mr. Devoe with this particular request. So this is, if this is something we're comfortable with, then this is the process for them.
Personally, landscape and that, but, the boat with the variance in the front yard. I don't think it's board, what was the word I was looking for?
Well, you know, are you comfortable with it from a policy perspective?
Policy perspective, and I don't think that's up to us to make a policy or code kind of determination, because we would create a precedent for people that have their boats in the front yard. I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just giving my opinion. Because anybody with a boat is gonna want to be able to put in their front, oh, just go get a variance.
Yeah, that's true. However, one area where you could, it's defensible if you wanted to go that route is you brought up the uniqueness of your lot and how it's visible from three sides.
Mhm.
I mean, if you would, if somebody wanted to make this happen, I think that would be the line of argument to justify that variance. So,
Okay, right, thank you, Mr. Attorney. Yes. Yeah, gotta do this. Okay. We need.
Did you want us to go through the conditions of approval if you're
Yeah.
thinking of it?
I think they said they've already met most of these 8 conditions, or?
No,
We've met several of them. Okay.
And we're very willing to work with staff to make the rest.
All right.
so some of these are conditions that, remember, a variance runs with the land. So
Correct,
some of these conditions aren't for the DeVos today. They're conditions of approval to maintain the variance. So it is in a neat and operable condition, the boat, it's not wrecked or jumped, but they may not own the land for the next 100 years. And this is how long a variance is forever, right? You know, so they obviously keep a neat and tidy property, but we don't know what's gonna happen next. So some of these are not particular to them, but are particular to the variance to allow staff to feel comfortable for that, if that were to run.
can a variance be made? I lost my train of thought.
yeah, they can't be restricted, right?
Yeah.
They can be restricted in time, I believe, Elizabeth. You
In
could put it,
time?
yeah, like you could put a time limit on it. You could say this is allowed and until such time as a renovation occurs, that would then trigger a redesign or something. Like you could put a timeline on it. So if the site ever comes in and was redeveloped,
Next 50 years, and that type of thing.
yeah, because otherwise, I mean, otherwise it's forever.
Sell property.
Okay.
You know, when the property is sold.
So
Right.
usually we would want to tie it more so to when the property would be renovated beyond 50%.
Right.
So
Right.
that would necessarily probably extend beyond the time that they would own the property, quite frankly, because of the condition of the home, but that might be a good one to give you all a little more comfort, so you're not offering this or.
Well, I think the comfort too is explaining that the lot does peninsula, you're seen on 3 sides.
Yes.
So the other thing is I don't know that we have it, but another one might be that the boat shall be equal to the size, and we can write down the size in the development order of the existing boat. So the boat can never, if the applicant would be amenable,
We
feel
never see
comfortable.
No, I'm not gonna be honest.
Right, because this is just parking for a boat, so somebody else could buy the property and put in a giant boat that fit in. there.
That's what we were saying.
So
We're gonna limit this to a recreational craft that big,
that big, so we'll get the dimensions, and then that would be the dimension of the maximum dimension.
so that's condition number, whatever.
Right, so if you want to do that, we would have to add that condition, and I can help you with that. Now, if you also want to do this, you need to make findings that, and some of those findings Jamie can help you with, which could be like some of what you've stated, Jamie, is that you have to make the 4 groups, 4 criteria are findings. So you have to make findings that it meets the 4 criteria and why.
Right. So before we make a motion, should we ask for public comment?
Yes, you should.
All right. Then permits the vote, thank you. Does anyone wish to say anything? Public comment, please. We're good? All right. Motion, please.
Any other motions? Yep.
And then another one.
So you would move to approve for the 3 variants as stated. You would need to state the criteria and maybe have Jamie make the motion. That it meets the 4 criteria because of X, Y, and Z, or the unique circumstances, some of the other things you were mentioning. You would also, based on your discussion, and I'm assuming, I don't want to like lead the witness, right, Jamie? Like, I've heard you all
Yeah.
say, you need to confirm back to me that you all have said that you want the boat to be the same size, not exceed the size, and you would also like a condition where it runs with the property up until the property is renovated beyond 50%. So the life of the structure, basically. Right?
Yeah,
So do you want to take a stab? I'll help you along.
yeah, so let's take a stab at it. So this is gonna be a motion in progress here. So, I move to approve HRPB project number 23-15000005 for 3 variances to allow a gravel boat storage area in front of the front building line, which also exceeds the maximum permeable surface coverage, does not meet, the minimum front yard landscape area requirements at 1106 South Palm Way. The project meets the various criteria for the following reasons. As in 4 criteria. 1, this is a specifically a unique property in the fact that it's peninsula and it's visible on 3 sides of the home. What are some of the others we talked about?
Criterion B is about reasonable use.
I think that was because there was no other spot for the board.
Right.
Mhm.
Gotta get right, yeah. Yeah, they actually provided evidence of testimony too, whenever they presented their case that to put this anywhere else on the lot, it would be cost prohibitive or not difficult to do. So this is the most optimal place for it to exist. Let's see.
And I think that speaks to criterion C as well, talking about the minimum variance required. And staff did find that it met D. in
And also
staff
too, they
report.
provided, I think, substantial competent evidence that the substrate or the actual material used for the gravel for the boat drains and it would not contribute to the storm water runoff as well. And then also too, if this puts premised upon restricting it to the size of the current boat, as well as
Staff recommended conditions.
staff recommended conditions and about the.
A time limit that
Yeah.
the variance will not run in perpetuity, but will end when the structure requires more than 50% renovation and is through the we have our non-conformity section, so we'll write up the language, so it meets the non-conformity section with the 50%.
Yeah, and
As stated. So we have an awesome motion. Can I get a second?
One more thing.
Sorry,
One more
our
thing.
lawyers on.
All right,
You're
Alyssa,
doing-
what did we do wrong?
No, you're doing really, really good. I just wanted to question, since one of the reasons stated is the impermeable or the permeable surface that is under the boat and the drainage capacity of it or capabilities. And so do you want to add that to your list of conditions, that type of surface remain in that area and it not be replaced with something that is impervious?
Yeah, but she's just making a point that an additional condition would be added, that the substrate would be maintained, so it should not be concreted over in the future. So we can work out the exact language, but basically the improvements that DeVos did under the boat would have to remain intact regardless of the ownership of the property. It would have to be gravelled with that site type of thing. And the DeVos are still gonna have to come back and get a building permit, or not a building permit, but they'll need a landscape permit for the gravel. So they're gonna need to permit that gravel area. So you'll need to do that on the flip side and provide that documentation of the permeability and the drainage. Okay,
Yeah, good.
all right?
I have a question. Do you have a cover for that boat or not?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's what I thought.
Covered right there.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
All right, so we have an amended motion, a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful evening, all of you.
Think I have a break.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. We're moving and shaking. We have a 9-item agenda, so we really need to get through this because our next potential meeting is in September. So if we don't get to anything, we're gonna have another meeting to catch up before, because we're losing our quorum in
We
August.
didn't even start the agenda yet.
No, we're halfway through it. We're cooking.
All right.
We're cooking with gas.
It's all fast now.
We're cooking with
Side check
gas and
later.
we're done with variances. So this is 23-00-100-141 certificate of appropriateness to convert a detached carport to an enclosed storage space at 809 North Ocean Breeze. This is a contributing resource. So here we are, 8th and North Ocean. Little property history. The house was built in 1951 in the mid-century modern architectural style, and the carport, it's a little bit of a rough drawing, but was built 2 years later in 1953. Simple flat roof, concrete block storage area at the back, and some simple pipe columns. Very common for the mid-century modern style for a carport to be built like this. So the property got a stop work order from the building department in November 2022 for work without permits or COAs. You can see here in 2016 and 2022, you can get an idea of that open carport to the kind of back and side of the structure. And then these were photos. On the left is from one of our building inspectors during the stop work order, and the two on the right were provided by the property owner. They were given the stop work order. They were erecting walls at the time. They applied for permits in January 2023. We've had multiple rounds of staff review and discussions before we got here tonight to you all. So we've got proposed elevations. Some of these are dark black because it didn't scan too well, just to give you guys some visibility of it. So staff advised the applicant to include large areas of glazing on the front facade to try to mitigate some of the visual impact of enclosing this open carport. So these are the two sides. The south elevation faces onto the neighbor's property, and the north elevation faces interior to this property. And this is the proposed floor plan. Again, didn't scan super well, but at the back here is the existing enclosed storage area. That was the original design. And then this is the formerly open carport that they would be enclosing for additional storage. So staff analysis, long story short, the current proposal would have an adverse visual effect on the historic structure. It's a significant alteration to the original design function and visual appearance, taking that open carport that was a character defining feature of this house and losing it, especially those, there's not many qualities to a carport, but being open is the biggest one of them, and that will be lost here. So another option that staff would have kind of recommended initially, if they'd come in prior to starting work, would be to build the walls behind the existing structural elements of this. So kind of similar to how when we talk about garage enclosures, we talk about recessing the door area to call back to that original function. Sort of a similar idea where if we would leave some of these support elements like the poles and recess it kind of behind this roof plate, it would at least leave a little more visual evidence of the structure's original use. So that is something that we wanted to bring up for your consideration tonight as well. Other than that, the proposed doors are architecturally appropriate. That long skinny window on the south elevation is atypical, but would have limited visibility from the street. Staff is most concerned about that front elevation, so we did recommend adding that large window. And we do recommend adding some horizontal muntins to that window if that's a design that you all approve, to imitate the house's original awning windows. We think that would just, call back to the original design nicely. So, like we said, we contend that it is an incompatible alteration, but we recommend that you all carefully review this to determine if you're comfortable with the alteration. And as we often do, we have drafted conditions of approval if you all move to approve this enclosure.
Is this a primary residence or?
Primary residence.
Do we have an applicant? Oh, come up. They're gonna state your name and then your address for the record.
My name's Stu Karsten, and I'm at 809 North Ocean Breeze.
And you don't have a present, you're just here for questions.
I'm here for questions, and I was at a doctor's appointment. I had a whole stack of papers and, all the pictures that I'd given them. But I got stuck in traffic, so I just came right here. But, it just, I do the stucco walls, the windows that they suggested, everything that's set back.
You're okay with their condition?
Yes, oh yeah, I did, the minute they told me what they suggested, of course, you know.
So these conditions of approval, there's 8 of them, they're in the process of being met, or they've already, you're already working on them, or they've been.
So, we have that recommendation.
Yeah, anything they, you know, like they said about the windows, I'm like, of course, I don't know. Mid-century, and
So,
it would be glazed just like the house that's by the street. And, everything that they want.
So, I mean, obviously, if this had come to us sooner, we would want a little bit, one of the things we bring up is. If you wanted to also provide guidance, we don't know how you feel about this, is just maybe doing something to show. Or indicate either recess or detail or something in the stucco to show or indicate its previous use. I don't know if there's a detail we can work out or something.
Yeah.
So that would be up to you, because one of our principles is to know where something historic was, and then to be able to see where it was and then to restore it back.
Right, and if you put the photo up with, looking up the driveway at it, because I mean, it's really back, yeah.
It's
there.
back there,
Really?
and then right now there's a fence, but like Annie said, somebody could take the fence down. But right now there's a white fence, so when you're driving down the street, you'd see about 1.5 feet of the stucco.
Okay,
So she's gonna need to come in for permits, so some of this may shift a little bit.
right.
Because, did you get your plans yet, your structural plans, or you're waiting for your approval?
I have everything,
yeah, we've got engineered plans.
We have
yeah,
engineered.
everything's
Yes.
approved and in, and
Well, is it approved or is it just in for review?
It was signed by the engineer. It's in for review in terms of permitting. It hasn't been approved by the city.
Okay, so, yeah, it needs to go through the permit review process.
oh, I thought that was. be done.
No, they don't do that because you. can't-
Until this.
They won't get started.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know any of this. I'm like, so what would my next step be?
Well, we haven't ended this step, so let's
Oh.
get to this step. So,
Everybody okay? More questions?
Yeah, no, I think staff did a good job of that, because I like the articulation you're talking about, to recess it and keep it to where, because I think the front's gonna look really nice.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
so
key.
what we can do is we can look at some stucco or something, because as it is proposed and constructed right now, it wouldn't recess it, but we could do some type of stucco indent or stucco pattern or some indication. We could work with her, and that would be a finishing issue, and we could add that, and that wouldn't change her structural plans. So it could just be as simple as like doing a reveal in the pattern of where the stuff or where the carport would have been. And that would be a depth of stucco application, something like that.
Okay.
And that would be an additional condition. We just did it because we punted it to you guys to kind of discuss and be like, hey, where do we go? Because it started off with a red tag. So when this happens, we kind of want to get a feel for where you all are, because we don't work with the applicant on the front end when that happened.
Did we answer the question regarding conditions of approval? Are we meeting
She's okay with all of
on all of them?
Yeah, she's not meeting all of them now, but we'll work through it. And then you're good with the Muntins. You wanted the Muntins instead of just the single window. And then you wanted us to also add a condition related to like a stucco reveal or a stucco.
And whatever we do also too is justification of this as well. I mean, when you look at the property now as it is, and the theory behind maintaining as open carports, the way that property is built out, I think it'll look better enclosed actually, because it's hidden in the back as it is, so I think it's kind of.
And the windows now are all. Whoever put them in the lady, they're all flat, like, there's no buttons on. Because like Annie said, the original house had them, I didn't even know what buttons were, but she put her white things, and I saw it from that original
Yeah.
house. But now whoever put the Does-
We're not sure of the status of those windows, so I
Yeah.
think we should move on from there.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you.
do we have any public comment? Are we good? We have a vote.
I move to approve HRPB project number 23-001-00141 with staff recommended conditions for the conversion of a detached carport to an enclosed storage space at 809 North Ocean Breeze, based upon the competence of substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements, and we've added one more requirement
wanna read
for
that?
maybe a stucco reveal at the front.
To indicate that it was, that was
Okay.
open.
So you're gonna make that it was open before.
All right, we have a motion. Second,
Second,
any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Right.
Have a good evening. Good luck.
Okay. Next up, we've got 23-00100-138. This is a COA for roof replacement at 623 North Ocean Breeze. So there we are. So this is another metal shingle roof. Historically was metal shingle, has been since 1939. This property did come before the HRPB to request standing seam roofing in 2022. That project had to get continued due to quorum issues, and then they decided to void the application. They reapplied at the end of May 2023. So they are requesting standing seam metal roofing. I promise they're not requesting green, it would be galvanized. That's just what came up from this website that of the brand they were using. So we talked about this right at the beginning of the meeting. Standing seam and metal crimp roofs are not considered an appropriate replacement for standing seam in our design guidelines or from the state's guidance. You've seen these before, not in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards, not supported by our Division of Historic Resources at the state level. If, for economic reasons or technical reasons, metal shingles are not feasible, then asphalt shingle roofing in a light gray color would be preferable. So these are kind of the three options that we've got. Metal shingle, you can see the dimensional asphalt shingles in the middle. Part of the reason the state supports these is because they do maintain the color while also maintaining the design and, like we've talked about before, that horizontality versus the strong vertical lines of the standing seam metal roof. And I did want to bring up because it may be relevant to what the property owner brings up later. Their immediate neighbor to the south, the bottom right photo here, was granted an administrative economic hardship for standing seam metal roofing in 2015. That does not appear to have been done in the proper way by being brought to the board. That would not be how the process would work today, but that was the case there. So we've talked about the previous direction before. We'd recommend denial for standing seam.
So you're saying they could have the other kind, which was the three-dimensional.
So like the one that we started off with, we would want you guys to find that it was, economically infeasible to replace with the metal shingle. This is, I believe the property owner lives here. This is their property, not an investment. But yes, we would want, similar to our first decision, that you would find it to, for economic reasons, that the asphalt shingle would be better.
Yep.
First to propose 623 North Ocean Breeze. I would like to appeal to you guys I can't do the roofs you guys are recommending. It's double the price of the standing seam and almost triple the cost of an asphalt shingle roof. So it's not affordable. I would prefer to do the standing seam because there are so many other asphalt shingle roofs throughout the historic district. I mean, so many more than the metal roofs, and so I would prefer to do the standing seam. I can't afford, nor think it's, that you guys could expect somebody to pay double.
Or so.
Well, the standing seam roof is 13,000. I've gotten 2 quotes for the Oxford and one of the other shingle roofs, and they're both over 26,000.
Asphalt shingle.
No, asphalt shingle roof is a little over 10. The standing seam is 13,
Right.
and both the quotes I got for the different types of metal shingle roofs
Shingles are expensive.
are
Yeah.
26,000 or over
Yes.
26,000. It's
I
not
know your
affordable.
house very well.
Yeah, it's not affordable.
Standard, you know, it's almost the same house, the other two that we wanted. I agree with you, right, but
I have a question. The shingle that was presented as an option, you priced that.
asphalt.
Yes.
And that one, so maybe if it's not the standard, it's that one.
Yeah, I believe that.
Three-dimensional
No,
Yeah, how much?
you mean the ones that are 26,000 you want to know?
No, the
The
dimensional asphalt shingles, what's the quote? Do you have a quote for
Yeah,
that?
it was a little over 10,000.
Okay, well, that's cheaper than the standing seam.
It is. Yes, I said
Right,
that. I,
and why do you still prefer the standing seams?
well, I think there's so many asphalt shingle roofs throughout the neighborhood.
Yeah, but that's not the criteria that.
I
we're
understand.
using.
I'm trying to appeal to you.
But you're
I
really
understand.
based on a hardship, a financial hardship, right?
To not do the other roof, correct?
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, can we stop?
Yeah.
What financial hardship, when does that start? I mean, how does that start? I mean, do we have, what's the criteria for that?
There's an application process for that, and there are criteria. We receive financial information, we strike a lot of it for privacy
Sure.
before, and then some of that is not put on, obviously, as part of the packet or published, because that goes directly to you all. But there is a formal financial hardship application. The Secretary of Interior Standards didn't say it had to be an official economic hardship, but in the previous direction of the board, they wanted applicants to come in with an economic hardship application.
Yes.
So
It's a
that would
huge
be,
difference in price, though. I mean,
so that would be,
anybody.
that would be a difference of, what you're recommending forward is, are you, as a rule, are you saying, okay, this is so expensive? Do you want documentation and evidence that is unaffordable to the individual applicant? Do you want some documentation? Do you want a formal economic hardship application, which is a very detailed application?
You know, we're not gonna run into this too much metal roofs, we only have about 15 of them left. We do run into it with the cement tile.
Yeah.
Which is the mid-century home, we run into that a lot. More so than the metal. So do we set a precedent?
I think the wise thing to do here is to establish, in order for it to be right for our consideration, is for the applicant to have gone through an application for economic hardship. Otherwise, we're just guessing here. That's
I
my
put it
personal
through the
opinion.
application process when that roof is 3 times the cost. It's 3 times the cost of the asphalt.
We have to make decisions based on what facts are, and so we don't know how to make that decision on which shingle to approve if we don't know what your situation is.
I understand, but a reasonable, you
Sir,
can't,
it's
you
not-
can't.
We're not arguing it, the board is discussing, they'll
Yeah.
ask you a question.
I'm just trying to give you my input, because I don't think it's reasonable that you can expect anybody to have to pay 3 times the cost for a different roof when there's only a few of them left. I mean, we're not talking a few $1,000s, we're talking, double the cost.
See, we're historic preservation, and that's, you just said it, it's you as well. We're quasi.
Well, then why don't you guys subsidize it? If you guys are so concerned, why don't you subsidize it? Because I can't afford to pay $30,000 for a roof.
Discussing this.
Yeah, we're getting a little out of order here.
So are we requesting a hardship
Okay,
application?
can I just also ask, sorry, that it says here, the board also gave direction that they would consider applications to replace metal shingles with, okay, that's on a case by case, sorry. I was just trying to figure out where this, asphalt, dimensional asphalt comes in. Was that a recommendation that would be a consideration rather than the standing seam metal roof?
Sure, yeah, so that was kind of brought in because
Yeah.
we knew that the applicant was bring up the cost differences of metal shingle versus standing seam. And because standing seam was so clearly not allowed in our design guidelines, we wanted to bring up the possibility of asphalt shingles as an alternative material that is less expensive than the metal shingle, in case that was where you all were moving.
But is more in keeping with our design guidelines.
Correct.
So the asphalt is more in keeping with our design guidelines, but the standing seam is definitely not. So would you be okay with the asphalt?
If
As
if that's my only option, yes. If it's that or the other one, which I can't afford, then obviously I'll go with the asphalt. But
That presupposes the argument that he qualifies for a hardship. And I mean, and we're talking about precedent for everybody here, as an application across the board for anything, really. And before anybody comes in and makes the argument that there's hardship in play, then we have to have evidence of that before we can even talk about the asphalt, shingles. And and don't misread me, I think that what we're trying to do here is just to determine whether you do in fact qualify, so that we can give you the, approval for those cheaper shingles. That's what we're trying to do here. We just can't operate, without the evidence.
Yeah, and you're saying the application process for hardship requires what?
Requires some documentation,
Yeah.
so we can work
Oh,
with
the
Mr. Pope.
taxes or whatever.
Yeah, we can work with Mr. Pope on procuring that information. We have, the information is required, certain information is required, but some folks haven't had that information, so they've prepared a statement in lieu of and provided some other examples of things of their financial situation. So you don't have to be destitute, but you do have to show that that is an unaffordable.
I mean, how do you guys determine what's affordable?
Well, they're gonna.
There's
That's gonna
there's an
depend on your
application process and there's
circumstances.
standards for evidence. So
Okay.
we'll set up an application meeting with you. I'd like you all to continue this. Does this have an advertising requirement, this one?
No.
No, okay, all right. I just want to make sure this was not, so we could just continue to a date certain, but since it doesn't, we'll work with Mr. Pope, we'll bring it back. And we'll provide some. I recommend that you just table it, so then, because you're not making a decision, you're not denying, because you don't want to deny and then have them reapply.
So move the table.
I think you're right, but we have to have some standards for hardship because we need to judge everybody fairly and equally.
And even if you doesn't meet the qualifications, there'll be some evidence of where he falls in that, and then you can then figure out where your tolerance level is with relationship to the formal hardship or documentation of some other type of more moderate hardship, if that's what you feel more comfortable with, like relative to a homeowner. Okay.
Right.
All right, so you need a motion to table.
Yeah.
And we discussed it, right?
Yep.
And we got a second.
Second,
All right, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, so my next steps are to contact.
Follow up with Sandy and Yen, and we'll set up an application meeting. Okay?
Okay,
Probably later next week.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir,
Okay. 3 left.
we have all-
We've got project number 23-00-100-129. This is a COA for construction of a new structure to be used as a garage, office, and dwelling unit at 122 North L Street. This is a contributing resource, and this is in a mixed-use district, right close to downtown, just north of Lucerne on North L Street. So this is the existing principal structure, the one that you can really see from North L Street for the most part. You guys might remember this. They did come for a conceptual review back in late 2022. So there's an existing garage on the property. This was condemned and will be demolished because this is in a local district. Condemnation means that you all didn't have to approve the demolition. So this is our proposed site plan. They're proposing here at the back to build a new 2-story building. And it's a little rough to see, but there are 2 garage spaces here and then 2 open parking spaces here. So here's our elevation. So this south one facing down towards Lucerne has most of the entrances, north elevation there. Our west elevation faces the alley and has that garage entrance. And there is our east elevation that faces internally to the property.
And this is obviously not in a single family district.
Yes. So we've got our floor plans here. You can see on the first floor, we've got that garage, some storage, some laundry, and a manager's office. And then the second floor is a 2-bedroom apartment unit. So for zoning, like Aaron said, we are not in a single family district. This is in a mixed use district, but for fully residential properties, it calls back to the medium density multifamily residential, which is why we can fit these 4 total dwelling units on the property. It does comply with our our zoning requirements with the exception of impermeable surface. We are just squeaking over that impermeable surface total. So we've added a conditional approval that some of the existing impermeable surface, it's like 1.3%. So just a little bit is removed. Sorry. So our overall preservation and design analysis is that it's somewhat consistent with the wood frame minimal traditional architectural style, which is what the style of the main house is. And we think with some design modifications, the structure could be visibly compatible with the surrounding district. In terms of height and massing, it is taller than a lot of the single family homes around it, but it's very compatible with other multifamily buildings nearby. And like I said, fits with all the zoning requirements for site features and parking. So kind of going through some of the modifications that we would like to see. The applicant really sought to differentiate the new structure, but we think that some of these features that they tried to use to differentiate end up detracting from the ability to really read as wood frame minimal traditional. So smooth stucco for the walls, not really common for this style. So we recommend using siding or even stucco to imitate siding, at least across the first story. They could do it on both stories or on the first story with some stucco banding to separate the 2 materials. Roofing, standing seam and 5E crimp, not typical for this style either. We recommend dimensional asphalt shingles for the roofing. And then we've got some blank wall space. I'm gonna bump us back to the elevations here. So here on our north elevation on that first story, we're completely blank. And then here on the east elevation, we've got a big blank space as well. And that is something that our ordinance and our guidelines there try to avoid. So we're recommending that they add some windows here or at least add some faux shutters. So in that case, inoperable shutters over blank wall space to give the appearance that there's a window underneath, just to really break those up.
They need to inset with a little stuff, like usually it helps if there's a little stucco reveal or something like that, that helps the shutter look more real,
Yeah. Yeah. And then just overall, we do think that this one is, I guess, more of a softer recommendation, but we do think that some decorative shutters, multi-light muntin designs, doors with glazing, or some sort of simple colonial revival detailing around the doors could just add some overall visual interest, kind of zhuzh it up a bit. Getting really technical there, but
That's my negative influence.
but overall, we do recommend approval with conditions. We've added conditions that cover all of those design elements and zoning elements that we've talked about today. And that's where we stand on it.
Are the applicants here?
I think so. I think they were planning to come. I hope they didn't get locked out by accident, but I don't see Mr. Payne.
So they don't have to be here to consider it. I mean, we are.
What you were saying, I can't.
So what we would say is some of these other decorative components is that.
I agree, I think shingles. The front house is what it is, it's historical, it's kind of cool.
No, that's different. We're not subject to the reviews, just the.
But,
No, I think he's saying to add it a little more to fit with the front structure.
Oh, I see.
yeah,
Yeah.
complement to fit, even though it, has to differentiate itself.
And we can work with the applicant on the back end and permitting to get all of these, like the decorative shutters, the multi-light windows and or glazed doors.
But sure.
Yes,
No, you're not. That's gonna be everything.
That's for
You can ask her.
I look forward to that.
it needs to be judged into the style that they're proposing. And that's one of the things, people don't realize how much new construction is reviewed for architectural consistency. And a lot of the new construction that's happened, especially in the Parrot Cove area, you drive down the street, you'd see that it's new construction, but it also feels very natural. Fits into the neighborhood. In the state of Florida, there is no architectural review for single family outside of historic districts. So if you look at what those projects look like, I will tell you, they did not look like that when they came to us. They look like they fit in because they went through the process for new construction. And so that's really an advantage when you're living in a historic neighborhood. With certainty that something is going to be compatible with massing. It's going to have a distinct architectural style, even if it's modern, it'll be distinctive and the architectural will be correct.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do it.
Come on.
I move to approve HRBB project number 23-001-00129 with staff recommended conditions for construction of a new structure to be used as a garage, office, and dwelling unit at 122 North L Street, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
All right, next project. So project number 23-001-00118 is a consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for window replacement at property located at 1102 North Lakeside Drive, and as a contributing structure in the Northeast Eastern District. For the record, Jens Adolfo.
Jan is our preservation planner and Annie is our senior preservation planner. So we're lucky to have them on our side. Yeah.
So the property is located in a single family residential district. So a little bit of background about the project. On April 5th, we received a CO application for windows and door replacement. On May 12th, staff reviewed and disapproved the application because the selected windows for openings 1, 3, 5, 6 through 8, 14 through 20, and 22 were not appropriate. They used a single hung window, and staff recommended to use awning mountains for the windows to replicate awning. And also the proposal requested to replace windows 9, 10, 11, and 12 with sliding glass doors. And also asked to enclose openings 13 and door 10, opening 13 and door 10. On May 8th, applicant agreed to add 2 horizontal mountains on each sash for openings 1, 3, 5, 6 through 8, 14 through 20, and 22, but asked to take the project to this Hrpb meeting. So here on the right, it shows like the architectural drawing circa 1955, and then you can see in the Florida room what the applicant proposed to replace with sliding doors. Originally, there were 4 awning windows, and currently on the left, you can see what the windows are. Next slide, please. The applicant wishes to replace these windows with these sliding paired sliding doors. Next slide. So the design guidelines state that windows and doors should be replaced in their existing openings without expanding or filling an opening to alter window door or style or sizes. Staff worked to provide some flexibility for window and door replacement, but felt that the alteration of 4 windows to sliding glass doors on a building elevation that is visible from the street was not complying with the design guidelines. And it's also a contributing structure, therefore, it's not be able to staff like. Slide. I'm sorry, go back one more. Yep. Per the design guidelines, replacement should be installed on the original openings, and the openings should not be altered in size or made smaller. So, and the appropriate window for masonry vernacular are steel casement, aluminum awning, jalousie, or fixed windows. So to conclude, staff recommends approval of the application with the exception of windows 9 through 13 and door opening 10. Proposed replacement for windows 9 through 12 with sliding glass door, which is visible from 2 public right-of-way, is not consistent with the historic preservation design guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends approval of CRA windows and doors with the condition to retain the historic window opening 9 to 12. Door 10 and 11 are not visible from the public right-of-way, so therefore staff is okay to work with the applicant with those openings if you know, we decide if the board approves, changing the doors max to windows max to 2. And these are the conditions of approval. And the motions. And I think we have the applicant here as well.
Hello, my name is Robert Huss. I am here up for my clients, Franklin and Michael Berry, about 1102 North Lakeside Drive. I'm the general contractor. I'm here in their state. My clients would like to change those 4 windows out to a slider because we got town approval to put a pool in. And unfortunately, you can see the property on all 3 sides. It's like a peninsula, you know, and if we're going by the standards, that's their backyard. So, and we think that they should be able to put in this nice slider so they can see their nice brand new pool that they put in. You know, it's an elderly couple, you know, it'll save them, you know, from walking from in the house. They'll be closer to the pool. If they're in their sunroom, they can see the sunroom. They can see when their grandkids are there that they're playing and being good in the pool. Also, you know, they're retiring. It's a retirement home for them, you know, and this has been a financial hardship because as you've seen on it, I submitted in April 5th. And here we are, where we at? We're July 12th. That's 3 months that they delayed my permits, my whole permits. You know, they don't state in their guidelines if you're gonna change the windows, you know, submit separately for all the other stuff that we're doing. The only thing that we submitted separately was for the pool, you know, so now we've been sitting here for 3 months and we couldn't do a thing. So we're gonna apply, we're gonna comply on the muttons. But my homeowner was requesting the muttons to be inside the glass, not on the outside. It makes them harder to clean. So we don't have no problem with that.
That's a new request. That was not part of it. When we talked to the
I
applicant.
didn't know that that was a stipulation of, like, I didn't think that would come in play. Like, as long as we put that bar there to make it a 4-pane window, which that's what it will look like.
Right.
It shouldn't, they shouldn't be able to say that it needs to be on the inside or the outside of the window. And my customer clearly wants them on the inside, so it's easier to clean the
I
glass.
understand what you're saying. I've just never seen one inside glass.
So the design guidelines, because what we're trying to do is replicate awning windows. The muntins are typically applied on the exterior to create the look of awning. Muntins on the inside don't create the look of windows that can open at the awning. So that's why they're typically not recommended.
Our standard conditions of approval are that they are exterior raised muntins.
And they look the same.
Okay,
You still drive by,
They're going by the guideline.
you still drive by, you see them.
Do we have a photo of the exterior of the house?
That's what I was gonna say. Do we have a
Yeah.
floor plan of how showing? You said that this is more in the back. This is.
Oh, no, it's
pool
still
in the front
visible.
then? With one of those homes where the pool is gonna be in the front?
No, the pool is in the backyard, so
Oh.
you can, so the address to the house is on Lakeside Drive, the front of the house is on 11th Avenue, I think it is, 11th Avenue North.
So this received a variance for a pool in the front yard. So front yards are not determined
this-
by the address. They're determined by the lot configuration. We do have situations where we have structures that have been where the front door is placed on what would be determined to be the side property line. But they received a variance for their pool in their front yard.
But this property itself was in front of us a few times a few years ago, like a complete renovation.
I don't remember that. I don't
No, I
remember.
don't think it was this one.
Going in between the
It's definitely
garage
outdated.
and the Florida roof, right?
It's going between the garage and the floor room, yes,
Right.
ma'am.
And that.
Oh,
Florida
I'm
roof
sorry.
is-
I thought this was a different.
No,
house then.
So this is
Right.
visible from 3 sides, but yeah.
Right there
it's-
where in the red right there,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
That-
where you
that's-
want the sliding door.
Yes, and
in
if
front of the
you,
pool.
you got North Gulf Stream, is it?
Golf.
Gulf View, there's a garage in the way from seeing the slider on Gulf Stream. You know, you only see it on 11th, but then we also plan on putting, we're gonna plan on putting your 4-foot security fence around the pool. And then we're gonna put shrubbery all in front of that, and it's all gonna grow up for privacy.
So I don't understand why it would be unacceptable to put a slider there. And I also have 5 properties in the area that have sliders in their backyard. Okay. Can I bring it up to you?
Yeah, you can bring it up, to it.
The homeowner did that.
Tell that homeowner, thank you.
So the historic guidelines do not permit sliders.
They don't permit changing the opening sizes. Usually we want the historic design guidelines so that they have to retain the opening sizes of windows, or
We don't
doors,
have a,
especially for contributing structure.
Or-
So,
is it right now?
no, it's blocked.
It's a masonry
Masonry
vernacular.
You're on the corner,
Yes.
you're on the.
So,
Right here.
yep, so a big reason that staff is bringing this to the board is because there is so much visibility on this property. These are where we're looking at. So because these were very visible, that's what made us feel like this was a big change that we wanted to bring up to higher authorities,
The
which
pool
is
going
you.
right in the middle there.
Yes.
Yeah, right in the middle
So you're
there.
gonna have fencing around there.
Big shrubbery to hide it, to give them privacy, so people on 11th. So I don't see why it should be an issue.
So typically what we do, an administrative application that could have gone through staff as a way to get this approved is not to replace all that whole bank of windows with a wall of sliders. But if you can look and pull up the floor plan, Annie, typically what we can do is, if it is a very minor, like an enlargement or like a double window, you can see there's a door pointing to the north and there's an existing concrete entry into the backyard. And so typically what we could do administratively is we could allow for the enlargement of that door to meet, to be a more functional door, because it's a door with a door. And then that door, but because this is replacing a bank of windows visible from the road, that and a contributing structure, that changes things a lot for us. So
Yeah, that won't work for my client because the pool's not in the back of the house. Or in the side of the house, because there's another house like 6 feet off of the other side. So we want the slider there. We want to close in that door and window. And so the customer can put a murky bed in there. So when they have their grandkids over, they have a place to store their grandkids.
This area?
Yeah, that area. So basically,
A
this,
pool is going here.
yes.
Right.
And we want a slider right there.
I have a question.
Sure,
You've been approved for a pool in that spot
yes,
and putting in sliders?
no,
No.
That's what we're
That's
doing.
why
Is
I'm here.
there a zoning problem having
No.
sliders? It's a historic guideline for It is replacing. the
that's why I'm here in front of you appealing.
Just making sure.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, we've been approved for the pool,
Uh-huh.
you know, and they want to be able to see their grandkids.
But you can
and-
still see them, you'll have windows.
No, if you're sitting down, you can't see out of the
Well,
window.
yeah, I mean, you.
So what are they gonna stand there in front of the windows?
Well, they're gonna be outside. Nobody's gonna leave their kids in a pool just sitting inside or even standing inside, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if the grandkids are old enough, you know,
Well, then you.
that's not for us to determine.
I have a question real quick though. So, and this is for staff really, but this property, I mean, it's kind of like open right now. And it's laid bare essentially. So so I understand why you want the sliders. I do. I also understand the policy behind keeping the windows, the consistent with the structure. However, it just seems that if the pool has been permitted,
Yes.
this property is gonna be dramatically changed by the way we look at it,
Mhm.
and that's not gonna be, I would assume that's not gonna be visible from the road, correct?
Right, you're
'Cause we're
gonna
gonna-
fence there.
Yeah.
Fence there. You don't have the plan where it shows the pool on it?
No, it's a separate
So,
permit.
yeah, that's gonna
No,
include the way.
I submitted in that plan,
Yeah.
the idea of doing the pool. So it should be inside those,
I don't
I
have
think you
it.
can envision
I don't
it
think it's in there.
with the
Yeah.
pool and the-
so we're gonna put a fence around it and she wants very high shrubbery, more than 6 foot. Will be far enough back from the road. So she has privacy back there.
It's gonna it's gonna situate the house properly in one direction
Yeah.
more, right? So,
Yeah, and at one point, you're not gonna be able to see that slider either. And I don't think anybody here is an adjacent neighbor that's gonna speak against it.
You can add to the conditions of an approval. if you-
Before you go any farther in discussion, you might want to see if there's public open public comment.
Is there
and
any
go to
public
board
comment?
deliberation.
Is there any public comment?
I just have a question. Are those windows?
You have to give public comment.
yeah. I didn't get sworn either.
Yeah. Public comment is not testimony.
Okay.
So testimony is, testimony is different.
All right. All right, so basically,
I mean, I think Jamie has a good point. You are totally altering the way we would think about property
Deliberation, so
now,
we're
if the
not-
pool is granted.
Sir,
Yeah.
so you know, we're not in discussion anymore, so they're gonna deliberate and then.
Want to sit down?
No, you can stand, but you just can't.
Okay, yeah, I want
fence in the pool, yeah. and I can see
It's gonna change the way that property is situated.
You doing great.
And it had
You're not gonna
from
see
that
it.
corner, from the
To the
corner
garage.
over to the garage.
And the property, it's gonna look a lot better, the whole property should look a lot.
Little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're going in that direction, you need to really make the determination that it's not gonna significantly alter the character because that portion is on a secondary side and you may want to require the fencing of the shrubbery so that the rear portion isn't visible or something of that nature to create the private backyard.
Because of the lot situation and the visibility from it.
Yeah, and in our code, there is a little bit more leeway for secondary sides. This one is a difficult one and staff is in a difficult position. And just to let you know, there's very little we can do with altering the openings administratively. And, we can make little tweaks here and there to make a door meet standard sizing or do some other things that are not visible, but with a bank of windows and a substantial change, this is not something that's within our authority to approve.
Yeah, one of the things too I like about Lake Worth is you have these properties like this and you have these very unique layouts of the properties. And so what you're doing here is creating a unique style of this property. And that's what I think is great about Lake Worth, because these are all across the city, so I think it works.
So our other issue is, I know the applicant is concerned about the muntins, but just so you know that is a design guideline issue. So,
Yeah,
and
I
the
think
staff,
that-
if you can pull up the conditions of approval for your.
That's gonna have to be outside, I think, unfortunately. For
Okay.
your,
If you give me the slider, we'll back off of that.
Absolutely fine, right?
yeah.
Let's see if I can find my own. There we
We
go.
have a motion?
Hold on, let us get there so we can put it on. for you.
Yeah.
I know, well, we have a timeline, so we've got to be on TikTok, so.
And because of how these are written, please revise the approval to allow the sliders, because we had written the conditions not to allow them, so just a reminder.
We can help you. Do it, Nadine.
All right. I move to approve Hrpb project number 23-001-00118 with staff recommended conditions for a certificate of appropriateness for window and door replacements for the property located at 1102 North Lakeside Drive. Based on the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lakewood Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements with
Yes, the openings 9 through 12 being sliding doors.
the what? With the
Openings,
opening
yeah.
sliders to be,
Window opening from 9 through 12 being sliding doors.
I couldn't hear you, with the window opening.
9 through 12 as sliding
9
glass
through 12
doors
With sliding glass doors,
Yes, with muntins too.
with buttons on the outside,
on the windows.
on the glass.
And doors.
Okay,
Have a motion, do we have a second?
second.
I have a motion and a second, any discussion? We're good, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys, thank you for the meeting. Is it gonna?
So we'll send a deal. And then once we-
This back there. We had to adjourn. Oh, it's very sorry.
No, we can include the video in the.
so we can,
Right, but it doesn't mean, it doesn't do exactly,
Yeah,
we need to keep going, we have a.
Yeah.
So we had quite a few comments. We had 11 comments. All of them were in support. You received all the comments prior to the meeting.
We've read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Officially, so this-
Yeah.
Record of it.
I have record of all the comments here.
all right.
Don't get into details.
So are you ready to get going?
yeah, all right, next one is HRPB project 23-001-00149 for,
Yeah, if you could use your microphone, please.
oh,
Thank you.
it's a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition to the front of the principal structure to allow for the construction of a new front addition, to construct a new rear addition, to increase the total building lot coverage through sustainable bonus incentive program, and to convert an existing garage to a cabana at 1405 South Airport. So, this is a contributing structure. Next slide, please. So the existing structure was built in 1945. It's a masonry minimal traditional. It has stucco walls, dimensional asphalt shingle hip roof, awning windows, and the garage was built in 1959. Also stucco walls, flat roof, and also awning windows. Next slide, please. So on December 12th, the owner was given a stop work order on the garage. They had begun filling in the garage doors to reduce the size. And the property owner also was in communication with staff to convert the garage to a cabana, to add a new pool, and also a front addition to the main structure. Staff indicated that the garage conversion needs HRPB approval, and also that the front addition will probably require an HRPB approval. So we brought it to this meeting. So this is the proposed site plan, floor plan. As you can see, there is the original house is on the left side, the proposed addition is on the right. And you can see the front addition on the right side, and then also rear addition. Next slide, please. And this is the conversion of the garage, which is on the left, to the cabana on the right. Next slide, please. Sorry. Back up here.
So basically, this is demolishing the front facade of the existing structure, enlarging the structure forward.
Yes.
And then replicating the existing and replicating the structure.
Yes, and you can see on the elevation east, that's the front of the structure. They're destroying it and rebuilding it as it is. Also the west elevation, they're sort of rebuilding it the way it was, except that they're enclosing one window. And then you see substantial, I guess, enlargement on elevation south and elevation north. Next slide, please. This is the streetscape, comparing the structure to the other neighboring, and it's a, typical one-story structure. All right.
And something really quick I wanted to bring up in the streetscape, because it becomes important in our staff analysis and it doesn't really get captured here. The entire block here has the same setback. All of the structures have the exact same setback, and it creates a rhythm on the street. So in addition to the front, although it doesn't really portray well here, would interrupt that rhythm.
All right, so concerning zoning, they don't meet their building coverage. They're over 2%. That's why they're going with the sustainable program incentive. And also, if it's approved tonight, they need to meet parking. It's required to have 2 spaces. Currently, they have 1 space requirement. Sorry, please.
It's because they're triggering and they're doing enough of an addition that they're triggering zoning.
Yes, by whenever they are changing the cabana, their garage to a cabana, they lose some of that parking spot as well. So staff has found that the proposed front addition is not compatible with the visual compatibility criteria for new addition within the city historic design district, since the front addition would demolish the front facade, destroy distinguishing character, falsify history, and alter the visual compatibility with neighboring structures. Next slide, please. Although the proposed reconstruction of the front facade is not compatible with section 23-514K2, additional guidelines for alteration and addition for contributing structure, it will recreate the front facade, roof style, window and door openings, and also what Annie mentioned, even though it replicates that, the setback is going to be slightly off compared to neighboring structures. Yeah. So staff has found that the proposed alteration of the accessory structure is not compatible with the visual compatibility criteria, since they're enclosing the garage structure, it reduces the character, and they don't leave a visual reference to the original structure. So like having a setback or sort of indicating where the original garage door was. Right. So staff condensed that the proposal is not compatible with the design guidelines. The proposed front addition will destroy the front facade. And the proposed alteration to garage door opening will not leave any visual reference as well. So. As conclusion, the front addition is not consistent with the historic design guidelines. Because of the loss of the property, staff proposed a denial and no condition of approval have been provided for the addition. Whereas staff also recommends to review the cabana separately since it has a code case. And staff recommends to leave the recessed area where the garage door openings were so that we know where those doors were originally. All right, here are the approval conditions for the cabana. And next slide are the potential motions.
And something really quick, I wanted to throw in as well. Part of the reason that we are not supporting that front addition is because staff contends that there is sufficient space to the rear of the structure to add even a large addition. And we know that they are also interested in a pool. We believe that there's plenty of space for an addition and a pool to be there while retaining the historic front facade.
And I believe the property owners.
If you can just, before the property owner can come up, but I just want to finish, if you can go to the motions. That's why we provided a split motion, as we feel we don't want to delay their code case and that the cabana is workable through the conditions of approval, but that the addition really needs to be reconceived.
So you're looking to separate the discussion of the cabana separately, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we'll come up and say your name. So yeah, so we want to split and then work with them some more on the addition and then have them come back. So go ahead and say your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Elisa Prieto and I'm the owner of 1405 South Dunway, and I'm here with the general contractor who's helping us with the plans of the house, with my husband and my crying baby, sorry. And also with the president of our neighborhood association, who is also here to support the case. So I want to be brief because I know that it's very late and we all want to go home. I just want to mention we've been living here 2 years. We just moved 1 year ago. So basically 2 weeks before I had the baby, we bought the house and moved to the neighborhood. We really love the neighborhood. So you'll hear me now, but we want to be in compliance with everything. We are even starting a business. Also, I need helping us with that. So I'm with all the paperwork for starting a business downtown, just in front of the hairdresser common grounds. We are starting a business there. We just leased a place. The reason, by the way, why we started working in the garage is because the garage is the place where our washing machine is. And after 2 weeks I delivered, I was trying to wash the clothes and the structure was so destroyed that the door fell on top of me. It's a door that could never operate. It was closed, it couldn't open. So it was not a real garage space. Fell on top of me and my husband was like, okay, enough of this. We're gonna close this because it's dangerous. And I'm sorry, we didn't even know it was historical because it was behind. It's not seeable from any angle. And it's just a square with a roof, and we really couldn't imagine that was historical. The house, yes, but we didn't know the garage was. So that's it. I'm completely okay with separating the two cases. In the case of the conversion to the pool cabana, I believe the only problem, if I'm right, is that you want that the places where the doors are noticeable. Completely okay with it. We'll do it. You can tell us what you want us to do. We'll do it. Whatever it is. Seriously, I mean, we just want to be, yeah, I mean, because we just want to comply and move forward. We've been with this since November. My parents are coming from Europe to visit us. We have no place to hold them, and we want the addition to grow as well. So why do we need the addition? Because we have a baby. We plan to have another one. We live in a 2-1. There's no rooms. My parents are coming to help when I have the baby. It's impossible. They're sleeping in the living room. What do we want to do? We want to add, if you take a look at the map, we want to add the plan. We want to add a master area. So basically a master bathroom and bedroom on the front side. And I'll tell you why now. And on the back, we also want to grow. We want to make an office. So because I work from home very often, so I need a place to work. Why do we want to do it to the front instead of doing it to the back? Because if you see the structure, that the detached structure, the garage, actually they're less than 40 feet from the end of the back side of the house and the beginning of the next one. So if we put the office and also a master area, we grow the house to that direction, it's going to be so close to the other structure that it's almost gonna touch it. There's a big window, so it's gonna be a big window to a wall. And then also besides that, as you see, we have a baby, we have a dog, we need a fenced backyard. If we occupy all our backyard with the building, then there's no backyard for the babies to play with a fence. And I don't feel very safe that the dog and the babies play on the open street, because I don't know, something can happen. So we would like to have a swimming pool and a backyard, and that is impossible if we make it to the back. And besides all that, also, it's important that you know, and I have some pictures there, that there are 3 very big oak trees, really beautiful. Actually, when you're in the street, you see the trees more than you see the front facade. And they really, I think, contribute also to the historical character of the whole neighborhood. They're very visible. They also block the view of the very ugly building apartment that it's behind. My neighbor, Michelle, wanted to be here, next door neighbor. She couldn't. She's asking me to please, I mean, she wrote a letter. I have it here. I can read it for you, her letter of support. She
That was
doesn't.
included in their packet, so they received that before.
Okay, I didn't know because she gave it to me when she discovered that she couldn't come today. Okay, so I think this is interesting because this talks to the historical character of the property, and this leads me to the next point, which is again, we are very, very respectful of the image of the neighborhood, and that's why first we made all the changes that they told us in terms of zoning and all that. We complied with everything. Like they, by the way, it's not 2% that we are over; it's only 1%. And I already paid the sustainability bonus. It's 1%, and there is a space for a second car, which is, I mean, we can talk about that later. It's not
So
so
the
important.
second car has to meet a parking spec to the code. And so we'll have to look at that because it has to be dimensioned to, it has to meet our off-street parking requirements. So that's a technical issue aside.
I know, our GC can justify that there is one. It's
It's- we can
behind the
work out
detached
what's going on
garage.
with that.
Yeah, that is not something so relevant. But I mean, we're really doing every change that is proposed. And then what happens? So I asked for the blueprints in the city and I discovered, and if you go please to my presentation first slide.
Yep.
That actually the house doesn't look so much as it was when it was built. The blueprint that you see, that's a part of the original architectural plan. So in the year 1983, they changed all the windows. The windows were not originally awning. They were those windows that have grids up and down. Also, all the decoration that you see next to where the house number is now, all the decoration is gone. All the decoration around the entrance door, that's something new. My neighbor told me that the last guy is the one who did it. The entrance door is completely different. It's completely changed. And what's more, in 2012, they changed the roof. It used to be cement tile. It is now an asphalt shingle. So something that we thought is maybe we can contribute to the history of the neighborhood if we do this addition, trying to replicate as much as possible what was there originally. So, you know, that's gonna mean spending way more money. We are not rich, and that would mean spending way more money. Cement tile costs about $20,000 for that house, while I could change the whole asphalt shingle with 5,000, so it's going to be 15,000 more. I would change also. They told me that the right windows were single hung, but then I discovered that the appropriate substitution for the original kind of windows is another kind of windows that are more expensive and that I'm also willing to implement. So maybe what we could do is we could make this front addition. In this way, we can grow the house. We have space for the family. We have a backyard with a swimming pool where our babies and our dog can play. And at the same time, we can contribute to the history by bringing a house that has been changed over time. The changes happened in 1983, 2012. By the way, there are way more changes that I'm not even mentioning, but they closed the door to the north. They took a window that was on the back facade and they opened it, turned it into a door. There has been so many changes in that property. We are trying to make it go back to how it was originally. They also mentioned that most of the houses in my part of the street are on the same setback, but actually, if you go one more street to one side or the other, there are many houses coming more to the front. So I don't think that is something defining from the neighborhood in terms of aesthetically defining. Well, I think it's clear that we are willing to comply with anything that you guys ask us to comply. We are just asking to have the space that we need to grow a family in a place that we have invested in, where we are investing in a business. And by the way, where all of our neighbors are supportive of this and they all want us to do this. Also this morning, I was talking to a person called Wes Blackman, who told me that he was in favor of this. He thought it was something reasonable. And if I needed support, I have his support, and he is willing to work with me in making this work for all of us.
We put a lot of thought into it. I appreciate that, you know, but do we, this is all good to know going down the road, but, what? Are we gonna split this and really focus on just the? Yeah,
So I would recommend that you focus on the cabana. We can try to work, if you could give some direction to the applicant, if you'll support the front addition or not. I think that's what she's looking at, maybe, yes. So maybe you could split the vote. I think our biggest concern is that if you tear off the front facade and reconstruct it, this will no longer really be a contributing property. We don't believe it could qualify for that anymore. So this is removing a contributing resource from the district is what this will do. It will mimic the style, it will replicate the historic structure, but it will most likely remove it entirely from eligibility and treatment as a contributing structure. And I just want to note, just for like folks in the audience and folks out there in Zoom land or YouTube land, if somebody is interested in doing an addition and it is not visible from the road, that is something that we can handle administratively. So if the applicant had desired an addition for their family that was not visible from the road, we could have, that's something that we can take care of on the back end.
yeah, and I would also add too, I think that what you're saying is true, the sight line down, that the elevations of the houses are in alignment. That's something that's kind of, you want to preserve as far as the bones of a city, I would think, you know, and try to preserve those if you can. At least I think that's important, you know, so.
By the way, if you scroll down and see some pictures, you're gonna see how visible this is from the street, because you actually see that, oh, those are papers for the changes that I mentioned that were done. This is what you see from the street. You basically see windows that were substituted in 1983 and a roof that was substituted in 2012. And the chimney that has not the original design, we are okay with bringing it back to the.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we're gonna lose form and you're not gonna get a vote at all.
Okay.
So one of our members is in, so if you want to vote on something tonight, we need to take the cabana because we're gonna lose a board member, okay?
Okay.
Because they have a work obligation,
So we
so.
need to do a cabana vote.
Yes, I would say let's get the cabana vote because she's got a code case. You don't want to miss that vote, right?
Okay. So are we,
Can you pull up the?
Yep.
Hold on one second. Thank you.
Public
Thank
comment.
you.
We have public comment.
And discussion.
So the bulk of the public comment.
Let's do your cabana.
Yes,
okay,
My
so,
public comments regarding the front of the house.
so we should do the cabana.
okay, so I move to approve HRPE project number 23-001-00149 for a certificate of appropriateness for the cabana. Is that all I say for the cabana?
And we have conditions of approval.
Yeah, with conditions. It's the first motion. If you read it, just read that whole one.
Oh, okay. For, for the conversion of the existing garage to a cabana for the property located at 1405 South Palmway, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
So now on the second portion, so we have that motion, so I know you need to go. If you then wanted to, do you want to continue this to the September meeting? And then if you need to leave, Jamie, then you could provide some direction on the design and then we could wrap up. Because I don't know that, I don't know how much more time you have, you know.
Yeah, I need to head out, but I'd stay about 20 minutes longer just to kind of get this going, you know, moving along, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to, are we making a motion to continue and then you want to provide some, or do you want to just, or do you want to table this? Because do you want to table the addition and then have some discussion without a quorum, just some general thoughts about.
Yeah, that'd be fine. So I need that.
Elizabeth, we're good like that if they table it and then they treat it like almost like a conceptual review. No.
That's fine. I want to make sure that the motion is clear that this is only for a portion of the project and that you get your vote before you move on.
Yeah, they did that one. They did that one for the cabana already. This is.
Well, we didn't take the vote. We
Oh,
didn't
wait,
take
take the
the
vote. So take the vote. Let's go.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion? No, good. All those in favor?
Yes, I,
Okay, then you would then make a motion while Jamie's here to table this, so this doesn't count as a denial. So we'll table it until they bring it back. So if you want to make that motion.
Yeah, I moved to table the new construction portion of this project.
Second down.
All those in favor?
I.
Okay, great. So you can go, because I know you're 20 minutes over when you said you had to leave. You've got a work call. So, and then if you all want to give some direction to the applicant about your thoughts, and we'll treat this like a conceptual review, and then any changes to the general contractor, they can bring back with changes.
What's the code from the 1980?
Nice. Really probably should say what I want to.
Finger.
Right. Oh, looks like you're outside, okay? Let's say it on YouTube. Don't tell the sheriff's deputy that we're breaching security. For the bathroom. Okay, so we're gonna take 5 and wait for the other,
Are we taking 5? Because they have.
yeah, let's take 5.
Let's take a quick 5 maybe in the front. Yeah.
Okay. And then what they're gonna do,
Don't lock
you
me
can
out.
put it us on mute. Go ahead.
What do you think?
Well, they're gonna talk about, they're gonna, you put one on. Not being built, we're not, or we think it's still.
Yeah, so this is still part of it. It's just basically now like a conceptual review.
Okay, so conceptual review, like the one in College Park where they just replicate the original facade.
Mhm.
I would actually-
Yeah, so I think part of why staff feels like this is different is the one in College Park was a last resort for a structure that was, yeah. And it was like same location, all of that. So
Are
that's,
we're back, right?
yes, we're back. We're unmuted. We're back for
We're back.
conceptual.
We can't make any decisions or anything like that.
Yeah, no,
So,
they
you know,
explained
we're
to me.
having a conversation. I understand the block you're on. Now, what's directly behind you?
There's an alley and there's an apartment complex in really bad shape.
The one that they've been working on that.
It's falling apart, yeah.
Right, I discussed it
Actually,
with the-
they broke our fence a couple of times. It's a mess there. It's,
Okay, I'm just trying to. in
and
my
it's
head.
very high. That's why
Yeah.
the trees are important, because from the street, as you walk, you look at my property, you just see trees. You don't see.
Right.
it's
This
horrible
one
company.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the front.
Right.
Yes, this is the front.
Right, and it's this house here.
Yes, that's
Right.
it.
Mhm.
And what is, there was one that had a pool in the front.
Yes, go a little
Zoom
Yes.
back out.
Check.
This one,
There we
right?
go.
So this kind of. That one looks a lot different, I guess, from the rest of them, or.
So.
I would think one of the things we're interested in is perhaps seeing if we can get everything, I don't know, if the applicant can talk about that, if that would work or not, but sometimes people have done a rear addition that's 2-story, where the second story is very minimal. And where it's not, disproportionate, and you can see a piece of the second story, but it minimizes the rear footprint. So to maybe have a family room on the bottom and then the office on the second floor, and that would allow the preservation of the front of the structure. So that would be one of our thoughts.
It's a thought.
So you're telling me that you would allow to do a back addition with 2 stories, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be preferable to ripping the facade off. So that would be, you would have your master suite on the bottom, and then you could have an office space above that, because those are the 2 key areas. And then to do some, I know you would need some internal renovation, I'm assuming. I mean,
The front yard like they,
No, the pool would still be in the back. He
Yeah.
wants the pool in the back. That's why
Yeah.
he doesn't want to do everything in the
Can you
back.
pull up
He
the
just wants
floor
pool in the
plan?
back.
Yeah.
Put up the floor plan, and we can see, now zoom in on the. Can we?
what are we doing it on?
Here's her footprint. So the rear addition here is really, what is the rear addition?
That's it.
This little bit.
Okay, so that little bit, and then, so.
We can't go more, sorry, we can't go more in that way, because the trees are there, so we would have to cut the trees.
Mhm.
If you look at the Google map, you're gonna see where the trees are, they're huge, and they're right there.
Yeah, so could you widen that addition slightly and then do a second story, like widen it to accommodate a staircase, and then adjust maybe your double doors on the back of your pool?
Yes.
Oh,
But I think if you do that,
That's
there wouldn't still be room, because the pool needs to be,
right.
so
Yeah,
the pool needs to be in this space, because here, you can't.
Right, but you can move your pool over to the left a little bit. Cause I'm talking about a slight increase to allow for a stairwell. So, and then you would just adjust your double doors. So that would be a compromise position. That would still get you what you would need.
I think a compromise is the fact that I'm telling you, I would do anything, like, actually, the point here again is the facade that is there. It's not even what was originally designed. It lost a lot of pieces. It was added more pieces. The
So
windows
now
are
I
from
completely
1983. The roof is for
understand your argument. We're on
2012.
tweaks. So you're hearing design information from the board, and this is as staff. This, doing what you're doing removes it as a contributing property. So that's not what our ordinance is set up to do, and all of that other stuff.
But the
So
importance of having a contributing property is to have the district still with the same aesthetics, the same.
Yeah, but that's what the
history.
guidelines are. I mean, we're just going by what the guidelines, the changes you want to propose would mean that your home would no longer be a contributing property, right?
What is the point that makes it not be contributing anymore?
It
Yeah.
removes the historic fabric of the house. So even though you're saying you would recreate it further forward on the property, the actual physical historic fabric of the house no
Only-
longer
Only one
exists.
side, but the other.
Right, exactly.
And the
then-
facade
and-
is the most important
Yeah,
side.
so the whole code is set up to preserve the front facade and then preserve that front portion of the house. And the whole code and the reason, and like we said, that comes with a lot of benefits to the district. So if there's a way we can do something that would meet your family's needs for space, but also keep this as a contributing property.
Right.
I don't know if that's the board's goal, but that would
No,
certainly
I
be
understand
staff's
the
goal.
Direction you're going, in, which is a path of least resistance kind of thing to keep your historical preservation. Contributing structure. All right. Let's hear from, I think Craig wanted to speak. Greg.
Thank you.
Mr. Richter.
Great.
I know.
I knew it had to-
I know you like. Hey, guys, how you doing? Good. So anyway, Greg Richter, 1202 South Palmway. I am president of the South Palm Park Neighborhood Association. They called me to look at the property when they first said it was about the front facade of the house. I was like, no, just not gonna happen. You know, because I get called for this all the time. Hey, can you help us do this? But when I went down and looked at the property and saw the situation, I mean, this makes so much sense, what they're trying to do. And making this addition, keep the, they want to bring the look forward without, without compromising, the look. They want to bring it forward because they're trying to save some massive trees in back. And they're also trying to, maintain their privacy, because if they take these two massive oaks down, it not only affects them, it's going to affect their neighbors. Next door. Plus, I don't know how you're gonna get a big oak like that out of that property. And number two, with what I keep hearing from the city commission, I don't think they'll be really thrilled to hear that, hey, they want to take an oak tree out of here. So what they're proposing this is common sense. Common sense. No one's gonna see this because of the vegetation they got in front of the house. And this is sometimes we just have to like step back and go, what's the right thing here? And the right thing here is to let them have this look, but allow them to bring it forward and let them do the house this way. I mean, I can't see adding a second story in the back because then you got neighbors involved in that, I mean, and you could still end up seeing it technically from the front of the house. So you've changed the look of the house doing that. So I'm just asking you kind of take a step back, take a little different look at it. Because there's a lot of other elements involved here, in what they're trying to do, and I think to me, it just makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question.
We keep talking about changing, and it was changed in the eighties and in 2012. But this is a contributing house, which means it met guidelines when we became a historic district, right?
Yeah, so some of the things that were changed were things that can be restored or are not inherent to the nature. So the fundamental structure, the windows can be replaced, and over time, when windows come in replace, we look back to the original architectural plans to restore those when windows come in. We have a lot of things that allow for the restoration of those pieces. So nothing that has been done to the house is significant in a way to alter it as its contributing status.
And you been to the property? You guys ever go check them out?
We have not been able to do a site visit for the property.
Typically we do, but we had
No,
nine,
just asking.
we had 9 items and we actually had 10. And because we're not gonna be able to have a quorum in August, we try to get everybody to the hearing. Normally, probably this item would have gone to the August meeting.
Right.
But we wanted to push this forward because the applicant had a code case and because some people want to take a vacation and there's only 4 board members left. So,
I put my.
so this is kind of why you're here now with the whole thing and why we also wanted to bring the addition
Right.
forward as well.
Well, I mean, we heard some good ideas, some concerns. This will come back in front of us when?
September for the September.
Okay, And you'll have seen the property. Sure you're gonna get that here.
Would you like to see an alternate design? Because it's hard for us to look at this.
Give direction.
Is it feasible to look at a second story? Is that something you
I
would
don't
be
think
willing to
there's-
look at?
I'm willing to look at anything, but I don't think that there is room. I think we are facing.
You're probably not gonna get as much space, right?
That's what I'm thinking, that it's not gonna be room for a whole master area.
With the pool.
Plus the office, plus a little bit.
Unless you can,
bigger.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I'm gonna,
Maybe you can, maybe you can get even more. I don't.
So
I'm
we would
gonna see it
appreciate
with
as
my-
staff if the applicant would come back and do a conceptual with the second story. Because although it does change, it changes a part of the house that is not the contributing portion, and we
Right.
can make the addition distinctive from the original house. This does also set a precedent that we're removing the front facade of a historic structure, and we're taking, you all will be taking a contributing structure that is not, it does not have structural issues off of the rolls.
So no problem.
It's a big decision. I mean, this is not, it's important it's a big decision for the family, because I understand, look, I had a child and I lived in a historic structure for 20 years. And my house was 1,150 square feet. And my house was set all the way back to the rear, so I couldn't even do a rear addition. And my yard was completely in the front and fenced, and I lived in the city for 20 years, and I lived in a historic home, and I've done that. I understand how difficult that is to have a family in a smaller space, and the desire to have a more modern living space. You know, that's what I brought my baby home to, you know? So, for
So
sure.
maybe you could look at that.
I'm gonna look at that.
Maybe you could get.
But I really need the square footage, because as much as I share her situation, I think ours is a bit different. We're both European, our family is in Europe. Every time I deliver a baby and my mom comes to help.
But unfortunately, those are things we can't, you know.
I
we
know,
can't
I
go-
realize, I'm just saying that she's saying her
Because
situation
everybody
and my
has
situation is different.
Yeah.
So, and there's also an ability to perhaps even do, like, a lot of people do guest quarters. So a lot of people would modify the historic, you know, garage area and do a structure or do a secondary structure or expand the garage for some guest quarters as well. And that might change things or give us some.
Is that allowed though in a single family area? 'Cause I
Yes,
thought
you
it
can,
wasn't.
you can do
could,
guest quarters.
Yes.
You
He's
can,
telling you.
you can do guest quarters. You can't do a separate apartment, but you could do a separate guest quarters, like a bedroom with like a master for your guest. You could
So
do
you
an
can do a kitchen, you're saying.
Yeah.
You could have a
So-
bedroom with a bath.
She could do her office, she could use her expansion addition, single story, and then she could expand her garage slightly and do an office in her garage with her washroom, with her laundry.
might want to sit with West
Yeah, seriously, I would love it. I would love it. All I got is you can't do it, and there was no much discussion. Everything they told me to change, I did change,
Right.
except for the fact that I needed
But
more
get
square
some-
footage.
Get some ideas from Wes on the second floor, get some ideas on the you know, the guests.
Yeah, we can send, I mean, she doesn't even need to pay a consultant. Like, if she
Right.
wants to hire Wes, she's free to hire Wes, but
But she
if
can
she
also
wants
meet
to
with
bring.
you guys to
So
brainstorm.
I think sometimes applicants come in and they have a distinct visual idea of what they want. And so they want to really go forward with that idea first
Got it.
and push that forward. So I think maybe that's more of what happened here. And then we can go back and get very creative. If you're telling the applicant, hey, let's see if we can work out something on the back, that's our preference as a board. If she goes back with that direction, I think we can really look at some options and get her where she needs to go, so she can have her play space and her pool and her accommodations for her family.
Okay.
And I have a question, sorry, is it okay in this area then to add pools to the front, like in the house of my neighbor?
So you would not really have a hardship for a pool here, because you have adequate space and I think you have enough room for everything. I mean, you really have, you have 73 linear feet from your existing house all the way back to your property line. You have a pretty.
I know my property.
Yeah,
I
it's a
have
big-
less than 40 to the garage and to the oak trees, so it's not 74. I mean, it is, but there are things there. It's not that it's laying empty. I mean, otherwise,
So
I would just do it back.
Why
and
don't we
wouldn't
look at
have
an
this
aerial, we'll
discussion.
look at the oak trees and we'll look at some other options, okay? And then we can come back.
Thank you
and
guys.
get
It's
you
very
started.
good.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Would you like to say something?
Oh.
You got to know what you're saying.
You're gonna see me next time, and I just wanted to see what the process was like, and not that I'm gonna be brown nosing here, but I'm really impressed. I'm impressed with what you guys do. I'm impressed you guys are volunteers. I mean, that's.
Well, if you get through your process, we're
It's
looking for
impressive.
board members, and if you live in a historic district and you want to be part of
I
it,
would actually be, I would be interested.
please apply.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we're looking for
I
board
don't
members.
have to know.
Well, let's talk later,
Okay.
because there are some qualifications, so.
Are there any additions to the reports, things, other stuff we should know?
I think we just survived the meeting. That was our net goal.
Who knows, last guy?
Yeah,
Went through all the orders.
so we were worried we're gonna have to have a second meeting in July because it was tight. I will say, the LDR amendment that you reviewed earlier is gonna go to, city commission for first reading in July.
Okay,
Your next meeting will be in September. If, we maybe could have a special meeting on August 30th, but it's really tight because it's difficult when the new members come on board. We have to go through ethics training.
I don't think I'll be here on August 30th. I've got the last week of August.
holiday?
That's the Labor Day weekend. That's Labor Day.
That's, it's the Wednesday of Labor Day, okay?
I'm not gonna be here for the August meeting.
Yeah,
So if
So-
we get 2 new members, we could make quorum, is what we're,
If you get them.
if we get them, if they complete their training and their onboarding and their ethics. We're not gonna decide on the chair until we get a board, okay?
I think they flipped a coin the last time.
We made Bob the chair tonight because he's the longest serving member.
And as he should be.
And I may not be reappointed. My term is up tonight. So I'm just letting everybody know that. I did fill out an application because I was asked by one of the commissioners.
I would hope
to
so.
apply for the board.
Yeah,
Take
so,
Videotape, yes, just take a picture.
I think we're live. I feel live.
yeah, so
We're gonna-
let's